a discussion or a conversation surrounding like a crisis communication plan for a small business. Because crisis communication can be very intimidating, but it's also vital. And so we had kind of, in our last 3 to 4 sessions, kind of danced around various elements of what it meant to communicate in a crisis. And so today, what I want to do is talk about what does it look like to develop a crisis communication plan, and then what are some tools and resources that we can do to proactively be prepared for the crisis before it happens. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a short, when I say short, I'll probably talk for about 10 to 15 minutes. Let's be clear, I'm gonna talk longer than that. That's aspirational, but I'll talk longer than that. We're gonna talk probably closer to 30 minutes. We're gonna do a few activities today. And then what I developed is a crisis communication guide that I will try to walk you through during the latter part of this. So I want to start with a scenario. Um, Imagine that it's 7 a.m. You're drinking your morning hot beverage. I personally don't drink coffee, but many folks do. You're drinking your morning beverage and your phone explodes with notifications. A customer's viral video shows your employee in a heated argument. This video has 50,000 views and it's climbing. Local news is calling. The question facing your small business: what do you do in the next 5 minutes? What do you do in the next 5 minutes? And I want to be clear. Most of, if not all of your businesses will face a crisis at some point. And I'll actually share a little bit about a crisis that I faced with an organization that I work with, and a crisis that I was fundamentally unprepared for. We navigated it, but it took a lot of work. I'll share with that in a little bit. But I want to make a point right off the bat that the businesses that survive crises, they are not lucky. They are prepared. So we're going to talk about what does it mean to be prepared for crisis communication situations. So let's start. One of the things to understand is that most businesses will face a public crisis within 5 years. And there could be a variety of types of crises that you can face, but most of your businesses will face some kind of public crisis within 5 years. And what's important to understand is that it's not just a local crisis, but social media can turn a small issue into a national news story in under 2 hours. Um, some of you might be familiar with this. It was around 2011, 2012, but I was watching it a couple of nights ago in preparation for this conversation. When Carnival Cruises had a public crisis because they were not able to dock at a port, and it ended up they ran out of food, they ran out of supplies, and this ended up being a national and arguably international crisis that deeply impacted the Carnival Cruise Line brand, because this crisis occurred in the social media age. So it wasn't just a few news stories coming out, it was people tweeting about it, it was people posting on Facebook or Instagram. All of these platforms enable the story to spread much quicker. And while your organization may not be as large as Carnival, these viral stories can still happen regardless of the size of your company. Many small businesses never recover from major reputational crises. Like, that's important to understand, because unlike a Carnival, unlike Paramount, unlike Walmart, small businesses rarely possess the resources to respond effectively to a reputational crisis. They rarely possess the resources. But what I want to talk about today is, how can we develop a plan to increase your survival rate? How can we develop a plan to increase your survival rate? What's important to think about is a crisis. When I use that word crisis, that's any event that threatens your organization's reputation, operations, financial stability, employee or customer safety, or your legal standing. For instance, and feel free to unmute yourself, I'm going to ask a couple of questions today. Can any of you think of a crisis that most businesses have faced in the year 2025? You can either drop it in the chat box or just shout it out.
Supply chain issues.
Supply chain issues, exactly right. Yes, supply chain issues have been a crisis that many have faced. We would want to lump that like supply chain issues alongside of like tariffs or different things like that that have created challenges. And so every crisis is not necessarily a crisis of your making. Some of these crises happen to you even if you're not doing anything wrong, but you still have to have a communication plan. So some of the general ways in which we see this, a product recall or a safety issue. What about, think about like employee misconduct caught on video or of a criminal nature, a data breach or a cybersecurity incident, a workplace accident. If you are living in Jamaica or in Cuba right now, think about natural disasters with the hurricane rapidly racing towards those islands, and our thoughts and prayers are with them at this time. Think about negative viral social media posts. I just returned, I'm slightly jet lagged right now. I just returned 2 days ago from South Africa where I was doing some work. Um, the Airbnb that I stayed at for part of my visit when I wasn't working, just vacationing, I didn't have a great experience. Now, I could go on Airbnb, I could go on a variety of threads and blast the owner of this house, but I'm not really interested in creating a public relations crisis for this small business owner. Think also about like health code violations or discrimination or harassment allegations. These are all types of crisis communication situations that you might find yourself embroiled in. So, as we talk about how to respond, I want to give you 5 general principles. We might call these the golden rules of crisis communication. The first thing is speed. When you're facing a crisis communication situation or a crisis emerge, you need to respond in some capacity within the first hour. You need to respond quickly. You need to be the first person with information. Now, we'll talk about how to respond because responding inappropriately when the first hour can be devastating. So the question is, well, we don't know what the situation is, so how do we prepare for that? I'm so glad you had that question. We're going to try and get to that shortly. The second point, honesty. Never lie or hide information. You may not tell everything, but you need to tell something. Gabriel, I've been watching with great excitement and great interest the PR disaster that's been swirling around your elections there in Argentina. Because a lot of that is like, wait, this person said this person said this. If you all don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Argentinian election and it's really interesting right now. There's a lot happening right there, and a lot of it comes from poor communication when facing a public crisis and not knowing how to communicate effectively. Another thing you want to do right off the bat is after speed, after honesty, you want to think about empathy. You want to acknowledge the impact on those affected. You want to acknowledge the impact on those affected. And I just want to state for a lot of this, we are going to share a handout with you at the end that's going to contain a lot of this information. So you will be receiving a handout before the end of this call in the chat box as a Word document. Number four, sorry. Take responsibility where appropriate. Don't take responsibility for every situation. Like you cannot control the weather. Do not take responsibility for the weather. Um, but you can take responsibility where appropriate. And fifth, action. What are the concrete steps that you can take to resolve this? So I want to give an example of this situation. Every summer, one of the highlights of my summer, because I love talking about business, entrepreneurship, and how it intersects with what I do as a communication scholar. Every summer, I'm privileged to lead a pre-college access program for about 30 to 40 young people from around the US and even from around the world. And they come to my campus and we teach them about things like entrepreneurship, what it means to run a business. Well, they live on my campus and I'm the executive director of this program. About mid-program, this was my first summer leading this program around this past summer. Around mid-program, I realized I don't know that I have sufficient health information if there's an emergency that occurs with one of these high school students and they're minors. So at that point, what am I doing? I'm just praying, oh my goodness, please, no accidents, no needs for the emergency room, because it's like if anything comes up, I have a full-blown situation on my hand. And we make it. We make it to 2 days before the conclusion of this program. And what happens? I have two emergency room visits in the same day. And one of the foci of this program is creating access for students who will be first generation college students. One of the students came from a low income family and didn't have health care. So now I'm in the emergency room without any information about this student and much resources to help them resolve the situation. What did I learn from this? It's like I learned that I always need to be prepared for whatever crisis occurs. And that's what we're trying to do today. How can we be prepared proactively for all of these situations, no matter what occurs? So, how do we do that? Before a crisis strikes, you need to build your foundation. So, what you need to think about is who is your crisis communication team? Who is your crisis communication team? So, one of the key questions that you need to answer first is if someone needs to speak, who's going to be the one speaking? Generally, for smaller businesses, this is going to be the owner or the operator. So, for most of you who are logging onto this call, I would assume you're the owners of your small businesses. And so you would be the one to speak. So, what you need to think about is what am I going to say? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. How am I going to speak? Where am I going to speak? To who am I going to contact? Who else do you need? Think about what kind of legal counsel do you work with for your business? Do you have an accountant? What is your insurance company? All of these questions need to be thinking about. Do you have employees who can help leverage or utilize social media effectively? So who is who are your points of contact in a crisis? Because what you need to do is you need to have predefined roles. Now, depending on how small your small business is, it might just be you. In which case, you need to think about what are the different hats I need to wear and in what sequence do I need to wear them. The other thing you need to think about is contact lists. Contact list. You need to have it readily available to have all the phone numbers you need. In a crisis, you do not have time to dig through your email inbox. You don't have time to dig through your phone book. You need a ready-made sheet with all of your contact information that you can call, email, text, whatever you need to do, the relevant parties. I cannot emphasize this enough. You don't have time because every minute matters. So some of the things that you want on this contact list, your key employees' emergency contact info. If you have your crisis communication team, you know, who has 24/7 availability? Who do you need to wake up? You just need to let them know. I might call you overnight if something happens. Your legal counsel, your insurance provider. Do you have a local media contact? And this might be something as simple as I've met this person before. I've seen this person before, and we've talked. But who is your local media contact? Do you have an industry association? So maybe you do A, B, or C, and you have this industry association is something that you can draw in. You can you can ask them for additional support. And then key suppliers and partners. Now, who you contact will depend on what the situation is. For instance, not every situation is going to need to reach out to your suppliers. It may not be a supply chain relevant issue unless the supplier might see your name and or theirs blown up in the news, in which case they need to hear from you first. So you need to figure out who needs to be contacted for this situation. Now, let's start with the first thing that you need to have prepared in a crisis communication situation. You need to have what we call your holding statement template. Your holding statement template. The holding statement template is going to be a prepared statement. It's a prepared initial response you can deploy while immediately gathering facts. So the role of this, and I want to be clear, I have a template for you on all the handout you're going to get soon. So you're going to get this in a second. And but you're going to have a holding statement that is going to kind of say, hey, we're aware of, enter your situation, the safety, well-being of our customers, employees are our top priority. We're currently investigating and will provide updates as we learn more. For questions, contact, so and so at this. What you're doing with that is this is how you communicate in the first hour. You communicate just saying, we're aware and we're investigating. What you're doing with this statement is you're letting people know you're on top of it and you're buying yourself time. This is very easy to do. And you can leverage this. Think about it. You can post this to Twitter. You can post this to Instagram. You can post it to Facebook. You can share it with immediate contact. Like this is easy. And what you want to do is you want to craft a statement like this that resembles this, that is customized for your business. You want to pre-approve the language for this with your legal counsel, and you want to save this document in multiple locations. It should be on your phone, it should be on your computer, it should be in the cloud. You want to have this in multiple locations. Why? So that you can access it quickly. It needs to be all over the place so that it's there for you. The other thing you need to do, if you are the point person, if you're going to be the spokesperson, you need to practice delivering it, because it might not be you posting text on a web page or a social media platform. It might be you in front of a camera delivering this. We're aware of so and so situation. We're currently gathering the facts. You need to prepare to give it in a way that is convincing, authentic, and comforting. Does that make sense? So let's move on. Now we're going to get into an activity. Besides having your holding statement, the challenge of crises is that you never know quite what's going to hit you. So we're going to do an activity, and then we're actually going to move into our social media or crisis communication document in a second. But what I would like you to do, I would like you to list. We're going to take about, let's say, 4 minutes. We're going to list 4 minutes, and we're going to talk about them for a few minutes. I want you all to identify your vulnerabilities. Your vulnerabilities. So think about, what are your 5 worst case scenarios specific to your business? What are your 5 worst case scenarios specific to your business? Some of the questions you might ask yourself: what could realistically go wrong? What are you not prepared for? What keeps you up at night? And so what you need to do is you need to think about, what do you not want to happen? What are you afraid? Like, there's certain crises you could throw at me right now. It's, oh, I'm ready for that. That's not what we're interested in, because you're ready for that. We're interested in, what are you not prepared for? What are you scared of?
Has arrived.
What do you feel? Where do you feel you're vulnerable? And so let's do this. Take 4 minutes and try to identify 3 to 5 areas or 3 to 5 worst case scenarios specific to your business. All right, so let's take, part of this is just equipping you with, this is how we navigate this. So as I said before, the first hour matters. The first hour matters. During the first hour, you need to assess exactly what happened. And I'm dealing with multiple screens here, so if I'm looking away, I'm just looking at my screen here. So you need to try to assess what happened, which means you need information networks. You need to think about cultivating your information network. So that's where the phone list. Who are you calling? And your suppliers, Chandra, I'm thinking about your point. Who are you calling for this? Who are you calling for this? Who is affected? Is anyone in immediate danger? If that's the case, like, that changes the whole calculus. If someone's in immediate danger, you have to stop everything and address that before you can start responding to it. What is confirmed versus rumors? I can remember a situation where I was working with a team and there was a personnel dispute. And the biggest challenge I had in responding to this situation that was a personnel dispute was, I was getting faulty information. And my team was responding too quickly to a personnel dispute, and we ended up responding poorly because the information that was being passed on was not accurate. And so, trying to get accurate information as opposed to just people's opinions of what's happening is essential, because what you don't want to do is respond to a problem that is not a problem, and in the process of doing that, create a problem. So, that first 15 minutes is essential. Your second 15 minutes, you want to notify your crisis team. This is where you activate people. You want to issue remember that holding statement template we developed? We talked about the template. This is where you issue this. Secure, and that means retrieve, try to get your hands on all evidence, whether it's photos, videos, documents, if that's pertinent. But you want to try to understand and gather all evidence, because information is going to start flying out there quickly, and you need to make sure that you have everything that other people are looking at. What you don't want is for people to have more information than you have. For the last 30 minutes, respond publicly. You post your official statement on your channels, contact directly affected parties, and you want to begin monitoring social media and news coverage. This is where you need alerts popping up on your laptops, on your phones. You want to be getting updates. So, your communication channels, you have different tiers. Within your first hour, when we talk about communicating with that first hour, think about a website if you have one, whatever your primary social media accounts are. Chandra, you mentioned emailing somebody, like if it's a customer list, if it's a supplier list, if that's applicable to your business model, they need to be contacted. Tier 2, within 4 hours, any media inquiries, if it blows up to that level, any industry partners, and then you want to offer a little more detailed customer communications beyond just a blanket boilerplate template. You want to provide regular updates until the crisis is resolved. Your regular updates will depend on the nature of the crisis. So if it's like criminal proceedings, I'm not like, let's say someone's been charged with assault who's a member of your staff. Well, you want to give an update and you want to give ongoing information, but you're probably not going to be providing updates every hour, because once the person's been arraigned, there's not that much more information that you're going to have.
Yeah.
You could also do some post-crisis review communications. Here's what happened. Here's how we're doing this. Here's what's going on. And here's how we've tried to resolve the situation. In terms of social media, some do's or don'ts. Well, number one, you want to monitor mentions constantly. Do not argue with your critics. Like, that is a no. You're going to get bogged down. Respond quickly to reasonable questions. Do not delete negative comments. One of the things that I've done, for instance, I've mentioned this high school program that I direct every summer. One of the things that I've done, I took over this program a year ago, and I took it over in the midst of a crisis. What I did immediately was I tried to create communication networks that allowed me to hear what was happening. So what I did for all of my, parents of these high school students is I included all of them in a WhatsApp group, because by virtue of the WhatsApp group, it gave them direct access to me, and it also kept them off social media to get answers. So I could control the flow of communication. Now, for a business where you're having hundreds of clients, that's not practical, and you can't really do that. But the key thing is you want to think strategically, how can I create communication streams to be able to monitor the communication as quickly as possible? You want to direct people to official statements. Do not make jokes or do not be defensive. At times, I'll do PR consulting for various nonprofit or philanthropic or even faith communities. This is one of the things that I have to tell them all the time. Stop making jokes. They are not funny. If people are upset, that's not the time to crack a joke and try to make light of it. Show empathy and humanity, but do not promise what you can't deliver. Document everything. Don't go silent for hours. And so you'll see as we go through this document a little further, some things what to say. These are examples of good responses, and these will be examples of phrases to avoid. Probably the most valuable aspect of this for you all in your various small businesses is going to be this crisis response kit. This crisis response kit. So, what this should do for all of you is it should give you space to really map out this is my crisis plan. So, the first thing, and this is why it's an open document as opposed to a PDF, you can just go ahead and type in your customized holding template. This is my template. This is my document. I've given you a template here. What does it look like for your business? And I'm thinking back to Chandra with you shared 5 scenarios. You might have a different template or different boilerplate statement for each one of those. You might just have a general statement that you can use and then specify more as you go down. But it's worth the time to actually develop this. It gives you confidence and peace of mind that you're able to respond. Then you want to have your crisis team. You want to have the name, role, email, and phone number readily accessible to you. We've already done some of this. I've tried to give you all like the foundation to do some of these things. What are your top 3 crisis risks? This would have been the things you're worried about. So think about the top 3 that I'm most worried about this, and this is also plausible. Okay, so think about that. If one of those things happens, where are you going to post first? Is it going on your website? Is it going on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email list, something else? Where do you need to reach your customers and or partners or suppliers first? And another thing you can even do is start drafting initial social media responses. Think about it. You have those ready to go. You might have to modify them because you can't perfectly predict any situation. But if you have them ready to go, then at least you have something to edit, not just something to develop. You're not trying to craft it from scratch at a time when you're already going to be frazzled. And so you have just a couple of responses there. And then you need to think about if you get out of that initial crisis moment, what does the post-recovery timeline look like? You have to think about thanking folks, following up with affected parties, assessing financial and reputational impact. You want to make sure that you take time to debrief. You want to update your plan with lessons learned. You want to make sure you implement and also communicate preventative measures. And consider a reputation recovery campaign, which I think we might have one more session in December. I can't remember off the top of my head. If we do have another session in December, maybe we'll spend it on that reputational recovery campaign. How do you recover how do you rebuild your reputation if it's taken a hit? Some ongoing things: rebuild trust through consistent positive actions, share improvements publicly, monitor sentiment regularly. So just some general principles for you. Review and update your crisis plan quarterly. Train new employees on protocols if it's more than just you. Run an annual crisis simulation. There's a really funny episode, if any of you have ever seen the NBC comedy Parks and Rec. There's a humorous episode where they have like a pandemic and they run a crisis simulation about what's happening with bird flu. And so think about, what does your kind of simulation, especially if it's more than you, what does your simulation look like? And maybe it's just you're like, here's my message, here's what we're doing, and I'm just running through the speed at which I can do these things. Monitor emerging industry risks. What's happening to folks in your industry? What's happening to other fashion designers? What's happening to e-commerce folks? Are there new things that you can kind of anticipate ahead of time? Try to crisis-proof your reputation. This is where you're proactive. So community engagement, maintaining strong customer relationships, document your quality processes, and archive positive reviews digitally. And so your complete toolkit, you want a crisis communication plan document. This is where you map out the strategy. You want your crisis team with assigned roles. You want your holding statement templates approved by your legal counsel, your emergency contact list, social media accounts, media contact lists, legal contact information, backup spokesperson trained. So if it's not going to be you speaking, who is it going to be? And a cloud-based document storage system. And so what I would encourage you all to do is create your plan this week. Some helpful resources to you include like FEMA Crisis Guide, Red Cross, your local small business development center, and your industry association resources. The point we're talking about today is that it's not if a crisis will happen, it's when it will happen. The difference between businesses that survive and those that don't is going to be preparation.